You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast hosted by Matt Franks and Zach Bechtold. We hope you enjoy this week's show, and you can find out more about us by going online at beardedtheologians.com, where you can pick up a few t-shirts, listen to a few old episodes, and find ways that you can connect with us. Thank you for listening. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we have a special guest on the podcast, somebody I've been super pumped to have on for a while now. We have Kreg Yingst, who is an artist. I'm gonna give you the title of theologian. You're doing really good work out there, and just some really cool stuff. Kreg, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you both for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Would you let our listeners know a little bit about yourself? You know, who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Yeah, well, I am a full-time professional artist and have been that since 2003. Been making my living some way, shape, or form through my art. I have different bodies of work. But more recently, I have been working with the icons of the saints and the mystics, and that has continued along with different things. I've been doing a body work on the Celtic saints as well, which is maybe a little bit larger and kind of deals with their story narrative. So I am a grandfather of three and a husband and a dad of two daughters, and they've been a blessing in my life and keep me grounded. And so I'm down here in Pensacola, Florida. I've been doing the art fair circuit since 2003. That's starting to dwindle now, but that's primarily where I've been making my living for the last 20 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Matt and I both. I certainly came across your artwork with the Saints this last winter through Instagram and the work that you're doing there. And being from the United Methodist tradition, the first thing I went and looked at, you got John Wesley? Where are you at? And sure enough, and I was like, oh man, I'm sold on this guy. And then started digging into your work, and you put out the Everything Could Be a Prayer book, the 100 Portraits of Saints and Mystics. That it's beautiful, man. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I will. I'll tell you, my connection to the Methodists is my great grandfather Adam Yingst was a circuit rider in Southern Illinois.
Hey, all right.
So and had his own church there. I actually, on my Facebook page, I finally got down to that area and saw the church that he built.
Oh,
and
awesome.
And his father is buried in the grave right there. So it was kind of neat, following the connections. And so Wesley's been huge for me. He's a great theologian for sure. The book itself was a result of, I'd say 10 years of work that has just kind of come to a peak, and it hasn't ceased. But as it developed, this is what came out of it. Initially, this whole series was started in, I could be wrong on my dates. I want to say 2013. It was right after the Sandy Hook school shootings. And that was the first time that I kind of made a New Year's resolution that I was going to start printing and carving a prayer, one per week, and that was the impetus of it. It wasn't darkness, so that was the impetus, and then gradually it just got kind of extended to what you have here as far as Everything Could Be a Prayer. So different things, I think different things along the way fed it. 2000, when we had the COVID, I kind of went back to the Saints and Mystics to see what instruction I could receive, their wisdom. With the George Floyd murder, again, I kind of delved back into those of faith who had walked this way before, and who had been marginalized and had come under a lot of scrutiny, not only by the world itself, but by the church. And so I wanted to know how they navigated these times. And so it was a learning experience for me. I've been influenced by all of these people along the way. They kind of feed my spirituality, and some more than others, but each one has kind of played a role in my own spiritual walk, I would say.
Yeah. I love that. That's being Methodist, we lean into the saints sometimes. And I wish we would more for the exact reason you said. They teach us so much about how to navigate life. And I I don't know, the world has changed certainly, but all of the things we're going through rhyme with the people who have already been there and spoke wisdom into it, and we have a lot to learn. And so I love that practice of digging back in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think history repeats itself
Mhm.
quite often. And so you have to be on the alert. And I think you can go back to people that lived through those times. And as you kind of realize maybe what time or what period you're living in, who are the key people in that, but who can help me navigate this. Yeah.
As you've gone through this process, who would you say probably has touched you the most as you've learned from them? Or, like for
Mm.
me, I'm a big Romero guy, and that was through seminary. And so Zach, the one that Zach bought me for Christmas is the Romero piece. And I just noticed, like right above my head is the little postcard that also comes with it. So, but who would you say that as you've gone through this process kind of has spoke to you the most?
That's a real difficult question, because I guess it would just be at, whatever time you're talking about, because they've all had such a huge impact. Um, just off the top of my head, somebody like Maximilian Kolbe, uh, being able to lay down his life. He was put into a concentration camp, Nazi concentration camp, and during that time, one of the prisoners was called forth. Um, they actually had called 10 forth that were going to be put to death, because somebody apparently escaped. And when the one was called, Colby actually stepped forward and said, "Take me instead." And he was only in his 40s, but he justified it, saying, I'm an old man here. And so he ended up, they did make the exchange, and Colby ended up dying in the prison that day. But what's great is the other was finally released and actually lived with his family until he was in his 90s. So Colby definitely stood out. Somebody like Takashi Nagai, again, who he was somebody that went through the nuclear bombing there in Nagasaki, and still had a lot of grace. You wonder how somebody could actually deal with that, experience something of that nature, and still come out of it believing in a God. Um, but he's another one who had a big impact on me, and I've read some of his literature, and you can see how he still continued to struggle the rest of his life with just his own, I guess, pride, or just the same things we all constantly deal with, no matter the situation. So um, those two come to mind right now.
Well, I love that you picked two that are in recent history, right? For me, I get lost in the saints of, man, they were so long ago,
Uh,
and they're just stories now, right? And kind of have that legend around them, and yet pulling on people who are known, right? Like
yeah.
they have families that are still living and can tell those stories and live into that. But also the events that they went through are right there. They're not that far away, and like I said, history tends to repeat itself, and hopefully it doesn't do that. But we have a lot to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, there's key people from the older periods.
Mhm,
For me, somebody like Saint Benedict or Francis of Assisi.
mhm,
Those guys have had a big impact. Benedict with his balance of life, and Francis with his joy of life, and being able to strip clean of everything. And that's one thing I still struggle with. In our commercial society, is being able to keep stripping stuff away, because it takes your time. It just being able to go into the more of simplistic. I'm not going to go to the extreme of Francis,
mhm.
um, but I would like a little bit more of that in my life. And so I think as you come across these different people, I think people are going to relate to somebody and say, wow, this is really speaking to my heart. And this is something I feel that I could really begin to incorporate into my own lifestyle. So I think that was one thing. I've been living with some of these people for so long, in the sense that, I discovered them 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So they become, but at the same time, this whole year, I've kind of gone back into the Benedictine teachings and the Rule of Benedict and the commentaries. And there's something nurturing about that for me.
Mhm.
I think anytime there's a lot of anxiety in the world or whatever, I go back to what I really found nurturing or nourishing in my own spiritual walk. And that tends to bring kind of a grounding.
So I really appreciated what you've done with Black History Month and highlighting different voices in that space. Mostly because either sometimes it's someone I didn't know, and so I'll go and look and kind of get to know them a little bit, or just the artistic work that you do with that is just so amazing. Like I just was like, it makes me jealous. I wish I could do. I wish I could do that. My stick figures don't do justice at all. But your stuff, the stuff that you've done with Black History Month has just been really, really cool. To ground oneself in that space.
I appreciate that, and um, that group, as well as just seeing what many of them came out of or had to pass through, is just really remarkable. And with those icons, I was always trying to, not only, it's not so much a portrait. I mean, some of them are portraits, but more often than not, they're just referencing the person. So, the modern people might have a little bit more of a likeness, but icons um, tend to not be as realistic. And there's theology behind icons, and I actually felt like actually shifting that, because the icon's based on the Greek model of perfection. So the streamlined nose and some of the physical features that you would say, well, those aren't really representative of all cultures. And so I was able to start thinking about other ways I could represent, say, the African Americans in a more naturalistic way, but it was also a very theological way. and and then with backgrounds and things, I would try to incorporate just enough to maybe give the reader, the viewer. Uh, it's like with Josephine Bakita, you see a hand with the scars in it breaking her chains. With Harriet Tubman, she's in the river still walking, and there's just different little clues in those. Howard Thurman's got he's out in the forest as he was when he was a child, and fear of the storm, and learning how to be grounded within that storm.
Well, and that's what I was flipping through before we got on, and the Maximilian Kolbe stood out for that reason. The simplicity of it, but the imagery that you use and the symbols, and having, I mean, the swastika's there, and I mean, it tells the story there in the picture. without having to read a story, right? Like that, there's
Yeah.
something so beautiful about that and striking.
Yeah, there's going to be an immediacy with the
Yeah.
swastikas,
Mhm.
um, and I think some people have, you know, took offense to it, but it's just an immediate understanding of when and who, and then you can delve into the rest.
Right.
And I've also found it interesting. I mean, the swastikas were actually a Christian symbol before
Mhm.
they go off to hijacked, And I think of how often visual symbols make this turn back and forth. They get hijacked, and then all of a sudden it becomes a totally different symbol, and you wonder how that actually happens. But it does happen. And I thought for Colby, it was a means of of representing the time and place that he was, but also in a sense being able to pull that symbol back into where it actually should be.
Mhm. Yeah, you do it well. I mean, like you said, just throughout all of these portraits, all of these icons, you get that little sense of who they are, what they're going through, what brings them into this story without even reading the words, right? You just do that beautifully. Um, yeah, and not everybody can do that, man. So good job.
Oh, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. A lot of times I will try to find that little quote or saying that draws somebody in, and it can become a little meditative thing too, where once you've read it, you can kind of ruminate on it for a while.
Mhm.
And there's plenty of things you could use in any of those spaces. You're limited to so many words and something like that,
Right.
but it's trying to capture the person. And I guess whatever the reason was, early on they were meant to be those prayers, light from darkness, and then as I continued with the series, I was just looking for different quotes that I thought captured the person.
Yeah, I was looking at your one from November 4th of John Wesley, and I just kind of, I don't know, it's one that I'm like, ooh, that's probably one of the better things of John Wesley that I've seen, in a sense of just like capturing who John was. And I don't know, I just love even the little prayer that you have around it.
Mhm.
Is one that is a good way of just grounding. I have found when I use these or when I look at these, it's helped ground me in my day.
Mhm.
And and I know that that's what icons are intended to do, is to kind of draw you into a space or into a thought or a connection with God. And I feel like one of the reasons why I love yours is because it does that in a way that just I don't know, it takes you to that place where uh no sermon or music can really go, but the art just it opens up that creative side of your brain that just fires just those feelings.
I appreciate that. I don't always get feedback on my work, so anytime I hear something like that boggles my mind. I don't know how people are going to react.
Mhm.
You just do it and you throw it out there. I've had different types of reactions with my work, from tears to laughter to, and it just, it sometimes it takes me by surprise, but it really shouldn't, because I know that the visual can have that kind of power. And I know with the icons that I have in my house, it's the same thing. Sometimes if I go stand before something and just view it, it's almost the silence transcends or can transcend um, everything that I'm feeling, and I can feel a presence of God, in that. Um, Mine are very contemporary, so maybe they're part of the visual language that we all grew up on.
Mhm.
And so I don't, the traditionalists might have issue with my work, but I think for the people that this is their visual language, this is, it's the same reason I personally don't read the KJV all that much,
Right.
is I just identify with a language that is my own today. And I see that even in the New Testament, with the Greek, they were doing the same thing. They were bringing it into the marketplace. They were taking something to them that the ordinary person could understand. It wasn't this high thing above everybody's head. And I think that's maybe what these images present. But I do think that you can take that into the day. I had done the whole Psalms too a number of years back, and that kind of became my practice. As I would read a psalm, and any line that I connected with, I would just kind of ruminate on that throughout the day, and it was usually a visual that came to my mind, and then from that visual, that would prompt the image that I would produce. And I think these can do the same thing, where somebody can look at them, view them, read them, and then take that with them through the day.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the kind of space Matt and I have been trying to set up with this podcast for 9 years is reading through scripture and saying, hey, what stuck out today? Not to give people the answers, but to give people a starting place to go, huh,
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it that way, or I absolutely disagree with that, right? Just where's the conversation? Where are we grounded in that? And to show we can have conversations, whether we agree or disagree or find some kind of middle ground there. But it's just to kind of spend some time in scripture, spend some time thinking about it and talking about it, and what strikes me today. What's going on today that this hits me in a different way than maybe it will tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, in your yeah, we do that in different forms of art, right? Like it doesn't have to be the traditional
Right.
thing, and it shouldn't be because that's not
Yeah.
how we move forward.
Yeah. Yep.
But it takes
Everybody's
courage, right? Because everybody's a critic.
Yeah.
yeah, you just learn to wear it out on your sleeve. It's gonna. I mean, I've been an artist long enough to realize you're not going to be accepted by everybody,
Yep.
and somebody is going to take real offense at your work.
Mhm.
And it's, you do have to be partially the duck with the water off the back. I mean, I've been rejected by the church plenty of times. So it's with my art, which I thought was the stuff I was putting in, I thought was very traditional at the time. And so, it's kind of come full circle because God put me out there in the world with it then.
Mhm.
And it's funny because it seems as if the church has embraced it when it's further out there, I guess, when it's out to the broader church. I think when you're maybe just at a local church, you're in a smaller group, and that group might not accept it. And I've always told people that are starting these art fairs, location, location, location. It's your work might be a dud in some areas, and then you take it to another area, and it's the greatest thing they've ever seen. So
Right.
it was nice to be able to finally get it out there, and that happened as a result mainly of COVID.
Mhm.
That killed my whole art fair circuit for 2000. So all of a sudden I was out of work, and and, it became a sabbatical. I got a ton of work done, which was great. And then I just started using that Instagram
Mhm.
to put the work out on Etsy. And I was really surprised at how quickly um, people took interest in it. But it was something that I think we were all going through at the time. And so as I'm dealing with it and looking and researching these people and then putting that out, I think people could identify and say, yeah, this is definitely what I'm feeling. And this is somebody that I maybe should look into.
Yeah. Well, and there's a real connection there through COVID and beyond as you're doom scrolling through something and you see
Okay.
something hopeful. It's going to cause pause,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. That is, and there's the balance. It's, you're dealing with social issues and you want to speak to those, but at the same time, we as believers are there to bring healing and hope. And that's God can God can do anything. All things are possible with God. And so I try to balance, I try to think, is this going to be healing post, or is it, am I butchering somebody? Am I really beating down on somebody? I recently, I'll read different Psalms, and some are different commentary on the Psalms, or some people are doing prayers or poetry off of a Psalm. And one recently by a man named Jim Cotter, he it was Psalm 53, I think, and I posted it on the Instagram. But he starts it off as just kind of railing on the powers that be, in the world that are doing these things, and just kind of, God, where are you, God? Just smash them. And then all of a sudden he flips it. It's like, well, we're the powerful in our own realms, and so it is that balance. It's like, okay, I got to be careful, because the finger's pointing right back at you, and it's good to have that, I think, in our own lives, is a reality check too of where we're at. And it not saying that you shouldn't be out there, and I've got plenty of people in my book that are in the civil rights, or the Oscar Romeros, that they're fighting for the marginalized. And but at the same time, I think even they are offering hope. They were offering the people hope in a way that things might not get better, but this is what you do have. You have something much greater. And so I think that's what I've tried to do with the work.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. There's a real responsibility there, coming from the pastor perspective, right? And writing sermons. I
Yeah.
can say hard things and things that people don't want to hear all day, but if I'm not coming from here first, right, there people will see right through it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's that vulnerability and authenticity there, in whatever medium we use. That if it's there, you can see it right off the bat. If it's not, people know.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we've all heard that sermon.
All right. All right. And get
Preached it
beat.
on occasion,
You
but try
you
not
can
to.
get beat. You can get beaten down only so much,
Oh,
right?
that's right.
Dog.
That's right. Um, well, Craig, we'll sit and talk to you all day.
Yeah.
But we want to be a good steward of your time and energy, and let you get back to doing beautiful things. Anything else you want to share? Please promote all of your social medias, where we can find you, that kind of stuff, and we'll put it in our show notes as well.
Okay. Let me do that now.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah.
On Instagram, I'm at Psalm Prayers, and I'm also at, I want to say, Kreg Yingst, with a Kreg Yingst. If it's not Kreg Yingst, it's KK Yingst. So that one tends to be more of my music related work. I'll from time to time throw in some of the sacred stuff. To be honest, I don't like the dichotomy of the two terms. I do believe it's all sacred, and I look for the sacredness even in the music. What's coming out of that? I think you'd be able to look through my music and you would say the same thing. It might be somebody that's not quote unquote religious, but you are going to see something spiritual out of that. KregYingst.com is my website, and you can actually link to my different Etsy pages from my website.
Yeah, looking through your music, I mean, you're starting with St. Johnny Cash and Guy Davis and Jerry
Right.
Garcia. Come on, man. Let's do it. That's
Yes.
awesome. Aretha Franklin. Yeah, that's
Yeah. Yeah. I have a big blues selection. I kind of started with the block prints on doing the blues, and that was the first stuff I started doing. I was just interested with the stories, and I wasn't very familiar with the blues. And then that kind of grew into me doing some of the rock stuff, just because that's what I grew up on. I have touched a little bit on jazz and country, but not so much. And to me, it's a vehicle that speaks to everybody, to a lot of people. Let's say that it's a vehicle that speaks to a lot of people. It kind of reminds me of Paul knowing the Greek poets and being very familiar with them and what they had to say, and being able to speak through them, speak through their words. So.
Yeah, you had me with Freddie Mercury down here too. So I'd argue he's one of our better theologians. But what do I know? Craig, that's awesome, man. Yeah, we'll put all your stuff out there. And make sure that people go to it. We talk about the Bearded Theologian bump all the time. You'll sell a couple. It's usually to Matt and
Yes.
I. But yeah, we just want to keep promoting good work and fun work out there. So thanks. Thanks for being on.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, anytime. Welcome to come back. Yeah, please. And thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
So we want to thank our listeners for listening. You can, we'll have a link to all his stuff in the show notes, but you can find us at beardedtheologians.com, where you can find all of our past shows and some of the stuff that we put out there. It's not as cool as Craig's stuff, but it's very subpar, but it works. Especially for Mother's Day, graduation, and all the things that are coming up. We definitely encourage you to buy Craig's stuff, and then our stuff as gag gifts. So listeners, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and share us. For the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
I want you to subscribe and like this video. And push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.